We all have to recognize that the hope that other people need is something that we already carry with us every day of our lives. And we can give it to those people that need it when they're the most in need. And when we give people hope, we change their lives.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Championship Leadership. We got a special episode here for us today. We're getting tag teamed. We got Rick Yarosh and Tom Murphy with us here today on the show. Thanks for being here, guys.
Thank you for having us, Nate. I appreciate it very much. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. I learned Tom is sticking it to Rick. He's in Costa Rica, just hanging out with his feet up in the air while Rick has to go work in Pennsylvania, of all places, today. So
yeah, got to pay for Tom's vacation.
Tom's got a big smile on his face. He doesn't seem to mind. So
no, he does not.
All right. Well, listen, I was going to save this for later on in the show, but I'll do it right now. Let me give you some words of wisdom here, Nate.
Oh boy.
Probably a little early to get into this part of the conversation, but you should write this down, Nate. Never get in a roasting battle with a guy that's been roasted, because he always
True
wins.
Story. Yeah.
Now let me tell you a quick story. So one of the great things about Rick Yarosh, and hopefully I'll get a chance to talk about Rick here on this show. Rick has taught me some incredible lessons, and being a tough guy, and I've participated in some sports that some people consider tough, and I've wrestled my whole life. Being a tough guy, sometimes it's tough to show your feelings, and it's tough to laugh at yourself, right? And so when I meet Rick, at first year and a half or so, I didn't joke around with him at all, because I treated him like a wounded little puppy dog, and it was probably the worst thing I could have done, because Rick wants you to treat him like he's normal and like he's your friend. Mm-hmm. And so it really wasn't until about a year and a half into our relationship, I'd never seen Rick in a wheelchair, and he called me and he said, "Hey man, I'm going to get to the hotel real late, but I'm going to be in my wheelchair because he has a prosthetic leg." And I was like, "Oh, that's fascinating." And that whole year I was vlogging with my vlog camera, and Rick hates the camera. And just like a good friend, whenever I would pull it out, he'd say highly inappropriate things under his breath in school, so you can't use the footage, like a good friend would do.
Yeah, make him do a ton of editing.
Yeah, torture. But anyway, so he gets there real late, so I didn't wait up. And if you think about it, if you see a picture of Rick, his hands are kind of fused together. He's got one leg, and he used to travel with his dog, his bag, his shirts. And if you think about it, if you're in a wheelchair, Nate, you think about propelling yourself forward.
Yeah, sure, right.
But then you think, okay, well, if you can't use your hands, then you'll use your legs. But you think, well, he's only got one leg, so how does he do it? With his dog and his shirt and his bag. And so I get up real early in the morning, because I missed him coming in at night because he got there late. And I'm sitting down at breakfast, and I got my camera, and I positioned myself right in front of the elevator, right? And I'm sitting there, and I really wasn't messing around. Honest to God, I wasn't messing around. Because sometimes, I would like antagonize him a little bit, but I wouldn't let him know I was doing it, because, we just weren't there yet. Yeah. And so I'm sitting there at breakfast. The place is packed. And here comes the elevator doors. They go ding, and they open up. And Rick pulls him, he hooks his heel on the floor, and he pulls himself forward one pull at a time. And really fascinating. Yeah. And Rick comes out, and he gets about 3 pulls out, and he looks at me. And his head kind of like drops to the side, like, really? Are you really starting this early? And then all of a sudden, Nate, here's the punchline. All of a sudden, his head snaps up, and he looks like this to the left and to the right. And he goes, "Excuse me, sir, must you film a disabled man?" And then he goes right to the door. And I'm just holding my camera, and everybody in the place is looking at me.
Yeah, because you got to remember, no one in this place knows that we know each other.
Yeah, right.
So, and I didn't say anything else. I just rolled to the door, and I said it extremely loud.
Well played, sir.
He was trying to get some good footage, but if you want to see antagonizing, all you got to do is go to our Instagram and watch one of our reels where I have my.
What's your Instagram?
Sweethearts and Heroes on Instagram. And if you go there and you watch one of the reels of me taking my service dog out to go to the bathroom in the middle of the winter, there's Tom recording me And you will see what it looks like when I am
Oh,
being
that's good stuff.
antagonized by
Yeah,
Tom.
yeah. I love it. You guys are a good pair. Well, real quick, why don't you guys introduce yourself for the listener that isn't familiar with who you are, and then also what it is that you guys are up to.
Go ahead, Rick.
All right, yeah. So I'm Rick Yarosh, and I am a wounded soldier. I was wounded back in 2006, and today I am married. I have 2 children, my wife Amy, and I have my 2 daughters, Grace and Tenley, 3 and 11. And we talk about the things that we love in this world, and we were talking about families, and that's the most important thing in my life. And the other most important thing in my life right now is what I get to do in schools with Sweethearts and Heroes. So those are the 2 most important things in my life right now, certainly.
Sorry, Tom, you didn't crack that list.
Well, he's a piece of the Sweetheart and Hero, I guess. We'll include him in that. But as this conversation goes on today, I think you'll realize the importance that Tom has in my life, because I wouldn't be doing the things I'm doing today. We've been almost in front of almost 2 million students now, and that wouldn't have happened without my meeting Tom. So that's a big part of where I'm at today.
Gotcha.
Well, Nate, I'm a father just like you, and I really commend you. And before we started this podcast, I said, what's your story? And I love that you started with your wife. I too am married for 25 years, and my wife is probably one of the most important things, if not the most important things on this earth to me. And I have 4 children, 2 that are in the service. And it's funny, I was talking to Rick about this the other day. I said, I never pushed my kids in the military. They never. It's really funny because when you talk about leadership, it just hit me the other day. I said, Rick, I said, I think my kids joined the service because of you. And he was like, huh? I was like, yeah, I think they really did. And I never pushed my kids in the military. We were never a military family.
Yeah.
But for 10 years, my kids have watched me talk about Rick. When you talk about leadership, a lot of times I say leadership's never about what we say, it's about what we do. I do a whole thing on leadership, and it's really fascinating to me. And I've been so blessed by the relationship I've had with Rick Yarosh, and I too wouldn't be doing what I'm doing without him. I told him this year that when he's done speaking with Sweethearts and Heroes, I'm probably done too. But I'm a father I was born and raised in Philadelphia. My parents ran a very unique kind of little mission home, used to take people off the streets of Philadelphia. So I grew up with people that were really hopeless. And as I got older, you don't talk about having homeless people live with you growing up. And I got involved in the sport of wrestling. It kind of dominated my life. I was a horrible student. Rick and I have that in common as well. We flocked together. And, I fell in love with education in college, and I wrestled through college, and led me to participate a little bit in some professional sports, and didn't really understand why I got into that, why the universe pushed me that direction. But I figured it out, because it brought me full circle back to the beginning of my life. Started talking to young people about 15 years ago, kind of leadership, motivational kind of stuff. And a friend of mine that kind of is the joiner of where Rick and I intersected, asked me to do something on bullying one day, about 13 or 14 years ago. And I said, yeah, I could probably do something, and came up with this crazy little presentation called Sweethearts and Heroes. Very purposeful name. Yeah. And, I did this one silly presentation, and another school asked me to do another one. And then I had this chance meeting with Rick Yarosh, which, it's a wonderful story. And, or our organization did, I should say. And I started telling that story to young people. Just a tiny little piece of what we talked about in our assembly. And the universe had a different plan, and eventually got Rick and I together. And as Rick said, 2 million kids later, from Houston to Hawaii to Montreal and back. And we're booked every single day of the school year. So it's incredible. But the most important thing I'll say, and then I'll land this, Nate, I'm glad you shared about your children, because it's never been harder to be a young person than in the world today. Yeah. The destructive decisions that young people are making have skyrocketed. Things like suicides have tripled in middle schoolers. And I don't say that to scare you. And I know you have some kids in middle school and high school, but it's real. Yeah. And maybe that's the worst of the destructive decisions. And that's the path that Rick and I are on, is this path against this war against hopelessness. And when you travel with one of the world's hope experts, you learn some amazing lessons and you get to pass them on to young people. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. And yeah, that's the story, man.
How'd you guys meet?
Go for it, Rick.
No, Tom, you tell it better because you lie, you embellish the story, and you make it better. And
that's why I was got. Well, listen, I'll start the story, then Rick can finish it.
All right, that sounds
and
good.
I don't lie. I just make them more colorful.
Right.
When you talk to young people, unfortunately, you have to entertain them today.
Yeah, right.
Very difficult to compete with TikTok and things like that. So our one of our assemblies is 90 minutes. And when you go into a school and you tell a middle school principal you're going to speak to their 6th, 7th, and 8th graders for 90 minutes, they always say the same thing. Have you ever done this before?
Yeah, I bet.
And when we get done, Nate, the kids will ask us to keep going after 90 minutes. It's that entertaining, but it's also very powerful, the message. But anyway, in a nutshell, man, you know, like I said, we were speaking at a wrestling event. I'd wrestled my whole life. And, you know, Rick was there. He got inducted to the National Wrestling Hall of Fame and for his service to our country. He was a wrestler his whole life too. And he was there, you know, doing a little speech. And, you know, when you meet Rick, you know, you put your hand out to shake his hand like, you know, you're supposed to do. And he throws his hands up and they're just different. And you're like, whoa, what do I do with that?
Mm-hmm.
And so you usually shake his wrist, or, you know, now he just forces you to fist bump. He doesn't give you an option anymore.
Yeah.
Just don't blow it up at the end.
It's so funny that he says that to kids every day in school, and they're like, what do I do with that? They don't know what to do with it.
And the only way to become comfortable in life is to be uncomfortable first.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I hope Henry heard that.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we were there, and we had this chance meeting with Rick, and you know, really impacted my life. This one little moment impacted my life. And, you know, and when you talk about tolerance, when you talk about those kind of things with kids, you know, middle schoolers are tough. You know, they just have this natural aversion, and they're trying to figure out their different intergroups and you know, who they're going to connect with. And, you know, and they say things, they use their immature brain, and they don't think, and they say things that are very hurtful sometimes. And I'm sure they say that to you as a father, and they say it to other kids. And so, you know, as I was trying to figure out this message initially, I would do this really crazy things where I'd get these kids and get the whole auditorium to stand up in a big circle, or the kids on the outside. You get a couple of 100 kids, and I have this little plastic ping pong ball. You can get them on the internet. They're these little energy balls, and they got 2 little metal clips on them. And you put your finger on one, the other person puts their finger on the other. And then if everybody joins hands in a giant circle, the ball will light up. It's really fascinating because the human body is a good conductor of electricity.
Yeah.
Nate, it doesn't matter if you have 5 people or 500. If one person isn't touching hands, skin, the ball won't light up and make this little crazy noise. I wish I had one here. I'd show it to you. But anyway, so I used to do this crazy thing, start the assembly, going really well. And then I get up on a couple of chairs and get these kids to try and hold hands, talk about this ball. And it turns into a disaster. Because if you think of a couple of 100 middle schoolers standing up and you ask them to hold hands. Not happening. And I would know that it was like almost like a plan. So I get up on these chairs. Okay, we're all going to hold hands. 1, 2, 3, nothing. And the teachers are like, oh my gosh, this is a train wreck. Because, you know, you're next to Sally. She's next to Jimmy. Anyway, long story short, I always got down, pushed myself to the center of this mass of students, kind of dejected. And then I dropped this picture on the screen of Rick that was one of the 100 Faces of War that was in the Smithsonian. And I would talk about when I met him, and you go to reach out and grab his hand, and you're like, oh. And then I would just tell this real somber story of, like, if that was the last hand and you needed it to survive, you'd grab it. So have a little courage, have some tolerance, hold that person's hand. And really amazing, even in a bunch of young people that really have no real understanding of what it means to commit and to serve, they would always do it. And I had 100% success rate out of about 50,000 kids.
Wow.
And then, and then I'd get back up on the chairs, hold hands, the ball would light up. Teachers would be crying. They'd be like, oh my God, that was like, and so I did this to all these kids. And then I got a little spooked. I'm like, because Rick wouldn't have remembered our organization. It was just this quick meeting. Like, hi, how you doing? I'm here to teach wrestling. You're here to speak. And so we got a little spooked. And so I sent him a bunch of emails. Hey, Rick, you don't remember me. We met. I'm using your story. Because I figured, I'm getting this cease and desist order from this wounded veteran that says, and so I sent him a bunch of letters, emails, never responded once. and don't say anything yet, Rick. I'm going to let you jump in. I'm going to let him take over the story.
Look at him taking control of this whole thing.
I know. But I love when he tells the story. But anyway, so I sent him all these notes, and then I'm like, just screw it. Like, at least I tried.
Yeah. Sure.
So he must be okay with it. And he never responded one time. And then the universe takes over. And I don't know, I get a little chills thinking about this even today. But I don't know what your belief system is, the universe, the structure of reality, but it had another plan for Rick and I. And this is where I'll let Rick kind of take over, and he'll tell you how the universe unfolded the Sweethearts and Heroes message from probably about a 3 or 4 second meeting over a year or two before.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was getting those emails and the texts and the phone calls and the voicemails and stuff like that.
Stalker.
What's that? Yeah,
Stalker
right.
level.
Stalker. And the other guy that I had met that same day is bigger and balder and has more tattoos, and they're talking about anti-bullying. And I'm like, what are these guys doing? It's just weird. And honestly, I didn't care if they were using my story or not. Like, so whatever. I didn't really want anything to do with it. I was doing my own thing. That's why I was at that wrestling event that day speaking. And I was comfortable doing what I was doing. I didn't really want to be a part of a structured speaking organization. So I kind of ignored it. But then something really weird happened after that meeting, probably.
Yeah, but Rick, you forgot, what about the hero part?
Oh, yeah. So there's Tom again jumping in and just changing the story. Now I gotta make something up because he's lying. No, I'm just kidding. So the one part I heard the name of the organization was Sweethearts and Heroes. And when I heard the word hero, I figured that's why they wanted me on the team. Like, okay, we got our hero. We got the soldier who, was in Iraq in Iraq, and he'll be the hero of Sweethearts and Heroes. So I didn't want to be in a school parading myself as a hero. I would never consider myself a hero. Now, I understand that other people will do that, and that is fine with me, but I can't do that for myself, and I won't. Sure. So I didn't want to join because of that, for one, and then just anti-bullying, and I was doing my own thing. It just didn't seem like a right fit for me at that time. But months went by, after I had received those emails and things, and then I got this phone call, and the phone call is it's unbelievable that this phone call came to me, because to finish the story, I got to go back 20 years before that day I was speaking at that wrestling camp that I was speaking at. So Tom started Sweethearts and Heroes with a guy named Jason, and Jason and Tom knew each other from wrestling in college together. And so Jason went to college or high school in Queensbury, New York, and Jason was best friends with this guy named Shane, and they played football together, captain of the football teams together, hung out at each other's houses. They were just best friends. And then when they graduated, they separated. And they hadn't actually seen each other in 20 years. So 20 years goes by, they haven't communicated in any way. And they ran into each other around Christmas time, and they started talking about life and, their families and what they were doing in their life. And, Jason had mentioned to Shane about Sweethearts and Heroes, that he started this organization. And he also mentioned to Shane that they met this guy named Rick Yarosh, and we've been trying to get a hold of him for months now, and he won't get back to us. And as soon as Jason said my name to Shane said, "Did you just say Rick Yarosh?" And Jason's like, "Yeah, why?" And Shane said, "I was Rick's physical therapist in the hospital in San Antonio, Texas."
No way. Wow.
So after they graduated high school, Jason went to college and became a teacher, and Shane joined the Army as a medic.
Yeah.
ended up as a physical therapist in the hospital in San Antonio. And
Wow.
I had no clue there was a connection between those two.
Yeah, right.
Then that phone call that I got was from Shane. And
Okay.
Shane said, "Hey, will you please get a hold of they got something important." So a couple weeks after that, I met up with Tom at a Subway. And that's the short, simple story right there. We met at a Subway, and I'm sure Tom got a
That's
cup
powerful.
of
I love that.
meatballs.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, let me just make one last quick comment about this. Rick's right. When I was speaking to young people, whatever I was saying, man, to these young people during these presentations when I first started this thing, I would find myself in the auditorium after presentations, and young people would always sneak back in, just a handful, one or two, every presentation. Lights would be going down, and usually they'd want to tell me their story. And, it just brought me back to my childhood. And it was my brothers and sisters growing up. I used to spend a lot of time going to prison on the weekends to visit these people that my parents would take in. And, it was the same story, just struggling with life. And I just found myself right back at the beginning, talking to people that were really hopeless. And, we all think we've gone through difficult things in life. And, I've had struggles myself, but I've never been at the end of my rope, ever. And, these young people just were struggling. And I found myself talking about hope. And, hope for our organization really means hold on, possibilities exist. And I've already said this, that, we have a lot of young people, during, this is an unbelievable statistic I just read 2 days ago. 30% of 10 to 14-year-old young ladies have considered suicide, since 2021. 30%. That's like 1 out of 3 or 4 young ladies in America.
Right.
And so, I was talking to all these young people, school after school. And, what do you say to them? It's going to be okay, buddy. But I don't really understand the position that they're in. I don't understand hope and hopelessness. And so really, at the end of the day, it had nothing to do with Rick's status as a hero, as he said. That never even crossed my mind.
Sure.
The fact was we needed someone that really understood what it means to give up, to say, I'm not holding on. There are no possibilities for my future. Because when you look at Rick and you say, like, who the heck wants to wake up next to that for the rest of their life? And we say, oh, come on, Tom, love is on the inside. Yeah, until you look like that, until that's your story. And so when I heard Rick's story and I did my research on him and I watched a couple early interviews that he did, I said, man, that's the guy. That's the guy that we need to talk to young people about this utter feeling of hopelessness. And so when I met him at that Subway, I begged him, I said, man, just come and watch. Just come and watch one assembly. And he did. And 2 million kids later, from Houston to Hawaii to Montreal and back, I travel with one of the world's hope experts. And you don't have enough time in the next week to hear the stories of the impact that this man has had on young people across this country.
Yeah, it's incredible what you guys are doing. I remember part of the reason I do what I do today, I think kind of is I remember every single student assembly like I ever had. And I just loved it, and they never really told you when it was going to happen. Like for us, it was just all of a sudden over the PA, they're like, hey, everybody to the gymnasium or to the auditorium, like we get a speaker. And I was like, you're out of class. Right. But then I remember like the speakers, I remember the stories. And I also just remember like how crazy this is, that this is what people do for a living. Like they go across the country, school to school, and like motivate and inspire kids and like get paid to do it. Like that's awesome. And how do you do that? And I think I just kind of filed that away but yeah, for you guys to be able to do that, but also obviously it's, the difference that you're making because of it, pretty amazing. So appreciate you guys.
We love the opportunity that we get. I get to spend time with little kids in their classrooms after we do our presentations. And one of the questions the kids always ask me is, do you have a job?
I love it.
Because to them, this doesn't seem, I get to
Yeah,
have,
totally
like,
right.
I'm standing in a classroom and I'm smiling and I'm laughing, and
Yeah,
that doesn't sound like a job. Job
yeah,
sounds like something you're forced to do to make money. And
right. Yeah,
it's funny when these little kids ask, do you have a job? And I'm like, well,
yeah.
I'm in schools almost 5 days a week.
Yeah.
So that is kind of my job. But I
Yeah,
love it. It's hard to consider it a job because
it is.
that's, as a kid, that's what you think of a job. Like,
Of
something
course.
you're forced to
Yeah.
do to make some money.
Yeah. Well, like I said, that was the same thought I had. I remember, I remember like people do this, like this is what they do.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. What's the big vision for you guys? What are you hoping to do to accomplish, and, for how long? And, well, yeah. Do you have like a vision 5-10 years from now?
Well, man, my goal from day one has been to reach 50 million public school students. That's roughly the number of students in this country.
Okay.
And, we could spend way too much time talking about our future. For me, it's about, I love what Mother Teresa said. She said, never worry about the numbers. She said, just help that person next to you. And
Yeah.
you've changed the world. And I think that our goal is to change the world. And, sometimes people hear that, and you hear a lot of people say stuff, I want to have an impact on the world. But sometimes you forget that, the universe, I think it was Alexander Solzhenitsyn, that said, he wrote the Gulag Archipelago. And he said that the universe has as many centers as human beings. And, at the end of the day, Nate, you and Henry and Lisa and Nick, Rick and myself, and you're all the center of the universe, because when it's over, the lights go out, the universe ends, essentially. I mean, I don't know what happens afterwards, if anything, but it's over.
Mhm.
And so, I can talk about the big plan of hitting 50 million kids. And that's ultimately this big goal plan, is to introduce kids to this message that I know changes and saves lives.
Yeah.
I've seen it with my own eyes.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, man, the only thing that matters is when your son Henry's struggling. That's the only thing that matters in your life. When your daughters are struggling. So for me, man, it's one kid at a time, even though we have a big plan. But we really have no idea what we're doing, Nate. We started out, we're just a couple of dumb wrestlers. And, it's been a thing of beauty.
Yeah. Yeah.
The name of the podcast is Championship Leadership. And, I struggle with the word leader in my own life. I tell people I'm one heck of a soldier, and you give me a job to do, and I'll do it to the best of my ability, and I will do as much as I can. Now, there's leadership in that, certainly, but Tom is one of the best leaders that I've ever followed. So I get to be a soldier who says, I'm following your lead. And there is leadership in that. Like, I don't know if I consider myself much of a leader, but when people come up to me and they say, I don't know how you don't see yourself as a leader, I mean, that right there tells me that I have some leadership qualities. But I do, I follow the leader, and he's got a plan. I don't know what the plan exactly is, but that's okay, because I trust him. And, I think that's a huge part of leadership, is just trusting that person that's going to lead the way. And I'm going to be there to make it as successful as possible.
Yeah. Well, I was just talking about God 30 minutes ago before you guys on a different podcast. So absolutely. And obviously, I think championship leadership, right? Leaders, most of the greats you'll never hear them talk about how great of a leader they are. Like, that's so right there, Rick. I mean, just the fact that you're obviously having a hard time even admitting that you are a leader. No doubt that you 100% absolutely are. So, receive that for sure. Like, cause you're making a difference, man. You both are. We heard all the good, cool stories, and you guys obviously have an incredible relationship. What have been some of the tough moments for you guys inside of your relationships?
Inside of our relationships.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say some of the tough, because,
well, between you and Tom, I guess, is what I meant.
Oh yeah, no, I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
I would say, kind of beyond that one, I'll get into that in a sec, but with what we do in schools is tough as well. It's a lot of fun, but hearing the stories of the hopeless kids, Tom said that, I can kind of relate with these kids because of the hopelessness. I can't relate with their story at all. I
Yeah.
can't because
Right.
I'm not a 13-year-old who's dealing with the things that they're dealing with, but I can relate with hopelessness.
Mhm.
So that is the tough part of our job for sure. But we know that that's why we're there. That's why
Yeah.
we're there. So with Tom and I though, we have a good relationship, and we start really hard in the school year in September when the school year kicks off in New York, and Tom's gonna be doing stuff all summer, but in September we kick it off, and we go together until June. Like it's full
Mhm.
time. We see each other, and by October I am sick of him. Um,
You already
only
said October, right?
Yeah,
yeah,
September.
about a
Right,
month into it,
yeah.
and I'm just saying, oh man, it's got a little longer. So,
Yeah. One day at a time here.
but no, I think like we have spent the last, I don't know how many, unless it falls on a weekend, Valentine's Day. We've spent every single Valentine's Day together, unless it's on a weekend. I've seen Tom more than I've seen my wife on
Mhm.
Valentine's Day. Tom has seen me more on his anniversary than he sees his wife, because he was
Mm.
not very smart and got married during the school year. But that's our relationship. And we certainly had some tough spots along the way, but I can't even really pinpoint too many of them. Like, I think the school year gets a little taxing. Like, it feels like June. It does. It certainly does after that long school year of
Sure.
being in school so many times. But that's just overall. I wouldn't even put that on our relationship together. But it is going to be good not to see him for 2 months.
Well, if I had to jump in on this, Rick said something to me at the beginning of the school year this year, and it really hit me in the heart. And I'm overwhelming. If my wife were on here, I don't have an off switch. I'm 24/7, 365. I don't stop. It's just on all the time. I don't take vacations.
Yeah.
Like I will work every day on this vacation. I don't remember the last time I took a vacation. But after 25 years, my wife needed something because I'm gone all school year long. But we were in a hotel room early this year, and Rick said to me, he said, you've changed. I'm like, what are you talking about? I didn't change.
Yeah.
No, you've really changed. And I really, if I reflect, because it's a really fascinating question you just asked, because when I really sit back and have a little bit of self-awareness and really think about that question, I think I would have driven Rick away. And I don't know if he'd admit this, but I know my nature, and I am so incessant and over and over and over and over and over and over, and in all areas of my life. And Rick has an unbelievable radar. I've never met, maybe my wife has a very similar radar to Rick. Rick can meet someone, and in a split second, he could be like, no, not a fan.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying he doesn't like the person as a human being,
Yeah.
but he just can tell, like, that guy's acting.
Something. Yeah.
He's just not authentic and real. And so, and there's a part of me that I don't want to say I act, but I'm just very intense. I don't know any other way to say it. And Rick could tell you about that intensity. And it's like, I've had enough of this. And everybody that meets me, they're like, oh my God, I'd love to get to know this guy. And until you know me for about a month. Like I owned a restaurant for 12 years, 70 employees, and everybody's like, I want to work for this guy.
Yeah.
Until you do.
Yeah, right.
And I should say work with me. I've never had an employee, but until you do.
Yeah.
Because people are like, does he stop this? But anyway, so my point is that I think Rick Yarosh has changed my life more than almost any human being outside of my wife.
Yeah.
Just because I have had to become very aware of who I am in everything I say and do, because I don't think we have enough of that as human beings. And so I don't know if I'm really answering your question right now, but even the little irritating things that we do as a human, I have to pay attention to, because Rick's radar is so good. And like, I can start a sentence and he'll know immediately. I wish I had a couple of examples right now, but like, I can't fool him on anything.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, Rick, I met this person, and he's like, no, you didn't. And he'll just know instantly.
Yeah.
So I guess that's how I'd answer the question is I could talk about some great moments of, me breaking wind backstage and Rick being so angry, he almost left the auditorium. And
there's almost nothing more angering in my life than somebody that will publicly do that. I can remember in the Army, man, almost killing someone because they did it.
Intentionally, but anyway, that was an accident. But
anyway. I happened to be in my wheelchair at that time, which puts me at what level?
Oh no!
Exactly.
Back blast.
Exactly.
There, you're not clear.
Anyway, I could.
But that story, that's years ago too. That's years ago, and I would say early on in our relationship, trying to get used to Tom's intensity level was a lot harder. I'd say these past, I don't even know, 5-6 years have been very simple with our relationship. I know what to expect, I know what the plan is, and even if there's not a plan, I know there is a plan, and that there's this like agenda that we have, and we don't know exactly what we're doing when we go into some things, but I know in the end it'll turn out awesome. I really do.
Yeah. How do you guys make it work being gone? You touched on that, like you don't see your family much, it sounds like. How do you
That's
guys
a tough
deal
one.
with that?
Yeah, that's a tough one. So at the end of last year, I talked to Tom and I said, man, I got at that time, a 2-year-old and, a 10-year-old, and I'm not home enough. I want to be with them. And we just got through COVID too. So I was home all the time.
Yeah, sure.
And, I loved the relationship that I built during that time, and I wanted to keep that going with my family. So I told him, I said, I can't continue to do every day like we're doing. So he's like, all right, how about, and he's very easy to work with in that way. And he instantly said, okay, how about 2 weeks a month? I was like, oh, that sounds great. 1 week on, 1 week off, or 2 weeks consistent and then 2 weeks off. And I was like, that's awesome. So we made that plan. And then the next day he called me and he says, well, okay, so listen, I don't know if I really meant that.
I said 2 weeks. Yeah.
Can you work all September, October, and November? Can you work all of that? And I'm like, because that's when schools want us the most.
Sure.
It's right in the beginning of the school.
Yeah.
So
gotcha.
We booked that. And then after that, it was, 2 weeks a year, but I made the mistake of telling Tom I was available on Mondays as well. So I would be booked every Monday, and then, Tuesday's right after Monday. So why not? Yeah, Tuesday.
Right.
But no, I'm managing it. And honestly, we both know that we cannot continue to do this forever. We do know that, our families are first, and we have to learn the balance. But we're still, we've been doing this for 12 years, but we're still early in the game, of trying to figure it all out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough one, man. And this is the podcast in itself for me. I'm going to look back someday, and I sacrificed my family a lot for this, and I'm not sure why the universe had me do it. And number one, without my wife Wendy, this would have never happened. She's my biggest supporter. It just wouldn't have happened, and she's just very. That's an entire podcast.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I have a lot of guilt, man, in my life around leaving my kids to go work with other kids. But I really believe that the example that I've set for them hopefully has put them on this trajectory to change the world in their own sense. When you first asked that question, it's really kind of fascinating, because as I talked about self-awareness, I never saw myself during that time. But what's been really fascinating for me is, and this is like 5 podcasts for Rick, but Rick got married after his injury. That's a fascinating story. But he also, his daughter Tenley came into his life when he was about 5, when she was about 5.
Almost 4. She was just at the end of 3.
Right. And so she's 11 now. But then this is an incredible, that's a story in itself, Tenley and Amy. But Rick, we're on stage. I was actually on stage, and Rick gets a text message from his wife and said, there's an 11-day-old baby in the hospital whose mom left, and they had just signed up to foster. And so for me to be able to watch Rick, it's really, it's done a number on me to watch his, the struggle he has with his family and this love for helping kids. And I was there.
Right.
And, I chose one path, and I don't think I could be more proud of Rick for really, drawing a line and saying, hey, I love the work that I do. I love helping kids, but I've got to dedicate time to my family. And, I get a little envious of that sometimes.
Yeah.
The relationship that he has, and to watch him and his daughter, on video, because I don't see them at all, because we're on the road, but
right.
to see the relationship and to hear the stories, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And if I had no family, if I did not find Amy and I did not have my girls, I would be on the road every single day, and I would have no qualm with it, because I love it. I really do. But once Amy came into my life, that had to change a little.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Well, I appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you for answering that. Just, I can relate to, I'm not on the road nearly as much as you guys, but, I'm in the same boat, and there's guilt there for sure. And then there's a love for what you do and the impact that you make. And so, yeah, it's a battle. We're going to wrap it up because we're running out of time here, but maybe there's one thing that you want to leave the listener with that, if they were to implement into their life, might help them move forward, or might help someone in their life move forward. What might that be?
For me, it's, we talk a lot about hope in schools, as Tom said, and we talk about sweethearts, and sweethearts are the carriers of hope. They're the people in our lives who give us hope when we absolutely need it the most. And I'm telling you right now, I've needed hope many, many times in my life, through my injury, through having my children. Like, there's just, when we all need it. And we all have to recognize that the hope that other people need is something that we already carry with us every day of our lives. And we can give it to those people that need it when they're the most in need. And when we give people hope, we change their lives. I had a 5-year-old little girl who changed my life forever. Never met her before that day she changed my life. Never met her after, but she changed my life forever. And, the hope that we carry, it can change lives, and it can also save lives. And honestly, there's nothing bigger than that in this world.
Right.
So that's what I want people to recognize, what you are capable of for helping other people. It's more than help, it's hope.
Love it.
Rick told you he can read minds, and as you asked that question, the first thing that popped into my mind, and I told you that the name Sweethearts Yarosh is very purposeful. And when I got asked to do that original assembly, Nate, the first thing I did was sit down and look up the word bully. And when you look up that word, you find that in the 16th century, about 40 years after Columbus sailed, the beginning of the 1500s, the word bully was coined, right? And it actually meant sweetheart. And the funny thing is, Nate, it's a common thread that we all share as humans. And when I say a common thread, I mean, you wouldn't be on this podcast right now, Nate, if it wasn't for a handful of people when you were struggling. And it didn't have to be life or death, but when you were struggling, someone came into your life, one of your 16th century bullies, and they gave you hope. And as I told you, hope stands for hold on, possibilities exist. And when you felt like giving up, they were there, and they weren't always easy on you. Sometimes they had to kick you in the shorts and say, let's go, get your crap and get in the car. You picked the stupid sport.
Yeah.
And when you look back on those people, Nate, those people changed the trajectory of your life. And I might be one of the most blessed human beings on planet Earth, because there's no one else on Earth that's got to travel with one of the world's hope experts, had their personal life changed, spoken to over 2 million kids about hope. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the heroes part. And, heroes are just people that are willing to do things other people aren't willing to do. And they do this magical thing called jumping into action. And really, it's about action. It's about hope. And, I would say that, without Rick Yarosh in my life, I wouldn't be the man I am today. I wouldn't be the father I am today. I wouldn't be the leader I am today. I wouldn't be the human being I am today. And I think that when we covet those 16th century bullies and we just honor them, then we get to turn into them. And then we get to recognize, as Rick said, that we all have this beautiful thing called hope inside of us. And it's a choice that we make to give it to other people. And that's what changes the world. And I just couldn't be more blessed to know Rick and to spend time with him and to continue to grow and to change the world with him.
Yeah. Well, I sure appreciate you guys and what you're doing and the message that you have and that you're going out and you're sacrificing a bit of your own life to go and help others as well. And I'm sure you benefit a ton just as much, if not more, from what you do in return as well. But thank you so much for being here. It's really been an honor, and it's been one of the favorite podcasts I've had to date for sure. I'm only 400 in, so that's saying a little something. But thank you guys. It's been great.
Well, we appreciate you, Nate. Thank you for all you do and your commitment to helping others.
Yeah. What before I forget, what's the best place to go? Sweetheart and Heroes on Instagram, anywhere else to sweetheartandheroes.com?
Yes. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, too easy. Beautiful.
Yeah, hopefully our paths cross again, Nate. And
yeah, I hope
shoot
so.
me an email. I'd love to get your email, man. I'll shoot you a few things on what we do. And Minnesota's a great wrestling state. Very historic.
Huge.
I got a good friend of mine that I wrestle with from Minnesota all the time still today.
I was going to ask if you guys, ever come into the area.
No, I've never been to Minnesota yet.
We've had a couple inquiries in Minnesota.
Yeah.
I just watched.
I have a couple ties too, so I don't know. I mean, if you're interested, it sounds like you guys aren't lacking work, but we'd love to see you guys. So, well, thanks again for the time today. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Nate.
Thanks, Nate. All right, buddy.